this is the PowerStore Manager UI. Let me just log into that. And some of you, if you've seen, if a lot of this looks familiar, especially if you're familiar with Unisphere Manager, a lot of this will start to look very familiar because Dell is really trying to bring a uniformity to their management platforms. So what the PowerStore management platform does is it gives you kind of the total overview of the entire environment. So when you start looking at things like capacity, the hardware in itself, things like performance metrics, and I'll dive a little deeper into each one of these things, and then when you start to look at deployment, and I could do a quick little deployment as well, to even allocating volumes is very simple. So let's talk really quickly about the alerts and each one of those alerts and what does that mean. It's really a proactive approach. So as alerts come up, and not only does it give you the alert, but it also gives you a lot of the details surrounding the alert, and it gives you some insight to how those alerts can be corrected. So this particular one obviously is talking about looking at the capacity and telling me that based on our consumption, there's a potential for running out of space capacity within 8 days, and obviously you can address that as you need. And again, it's broken down into various alerts. So whether it's just informational, a minor, more major, and then of course your critical alerts as well. Let's run over to performance really quick and how that breaks down. And performance can really be broken down into either bandwidth. You can look at your IOPS, maybe even latency, or a summary. And the other really cool functionality is you can actually get very granular by just dragging and dropping certain aspects of the timeline. So if you wanted to look at, say, this little drop in performance, you can take a look at that. And it gives you the detail surrounding that. So when you're looking at your overall performance, you can get very granular. Of course, there's when you look at bandwidth, how much bandwidth you're driving, and again, we can get granular on looking at all of the different aspects of that. Oops, sorry about that. So when we talk about capacity, not only do you obviously get metrics of the capacity, but you also get the metrics of the data reduction. So when we talk about data reduction, again, I mentioned that PowerStore has inline and always on data reduction, and it utilizes the efficiencies to the best. Excuse me. So this is the physical right here, the actual physical storage used, but the logical amount of data, and then of course it breaks down of the data reduction. Now that's important to note because when you start doing capacity planning, this will give you insight as to what type of data you have and how much reduction you can get out of that. The other really cool thing too you can do is you could see the top, you can actually tailor this. You could see the top consumers, top consumer volumes, and over here on the dashboard, you could also have a watch list of certain volumes or certain volume groups if you have instances where you have a lot of action going on some of these groups, and you can keep an eye on those. As you can see, this PowerStore is set up to do both block and file, and it's not an either or. You can do both simultaneously. Now, when we look at the volumes and the storage in each one of these volumes, how easy is it to to create a volume? So you can do, I'll just show you a really quick volume. Uh, and oops, my typing is really off today. Let's make two volumes and let's make them 50 gigabytes each. Now you could also create volume groups and associate them with volume groups, but for the purpose of this discussion, we'll just create the volumes. And now you can associate those volumes with a particular host. Now, because this is a demo, I don't actually have access to these hosts, so I won't actually click any of these. But again, it's so easy. You just click on the host you want those volumes to be allocated to. And as you can see up here, it's creating the volume. And ta-da! I'll refresh the environment. And where is it? Oh, where is it? It's gotta be there somewheres. Uh, yep, here we go. So the demo volume. So when you talk about, again, when we talk about monitoring, again, these are all of the alerts that come up and you can group these together. But let's talk really quickly about the protection scheme. So you could actually set this up for replication or even managing your snaps. And there's also functionality here to talk about how you migrate data. And again, we talked about this briefly about migrating data either natively from some of Dell's or EMC's platforms. But I also want to show you this. So we talk about the hardware, and this is again a very detailed view into the hardware. Every component you can actually see, whether it's the disk drive, so you can see what each disk drive is, how big it is, and the functionality. We could also go to the rear. These are all the connectivity, and again, each component you can actually zoom in on, and you can get very granular right here for each component. And then, of course, there's the internal view when you start talking about each one of the processors. And this really comes in handy when you're actually talking about troubleshooting as well, right? So if the alert comes up, you have a bad disk drive, on this view, you could actually see which drive would be actually in question. You could actually, you would up here, you would see the activity of the drives, right? And you can get down into each one of those drives and get a very granular look. And that's kind of the UI in a nutshell. And again, there's a lot more functionality that the UI can do.